We continue now at the top of Daf Samech Vav Amud Aleph Meseches Bava Basra. This is Bava Basra Daf 66a. On the previous Amud, the Gemara brought a brisa with regards to mikvos. The brisa made a distinction between a duct, which first you created the duct and then you attached it to the ground. In that case, it's considered to be a kli. It's considered to be a vessel, and the water that runs through that duct into the mikvah is considered to be drawn water, and that disqualifies the mikvah. However, let's say the duct was carved out when it was already in the ground, then you carved it out, and the water runs in that fashion to the mikvah, so that's considered to be part of the ground, and that's considered to be rainwater, and it does not disqualify the mikvah. And the Gemara made a comment that this brisa, which makes a distinction between carving it out first or carving it out when it's already in the ground, that distinction of whether it's considered a kli or whether it's considered part of the ground, it's not like Rabbi Eliezer, and it's not like the Chachamim. And the Gemara wanted to identify which Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim are we discussing over here. And the Gemara suggested that perhaps it's the Rabbi Eliezer in our Mishnah, because the Rabbi Eliezer in our Mishnah says that when it comes to the sale of a house, anything that's attached to the ground is included in the sale. He doesn't make a distinction between whether it was carved and then attached to the ground or already attached to the ground and then carved, and maybe that's the Rabbi Eliezer we're talking about. But the Gemara said that cannot be the Rabbi Eliezer we're talking about, because over there, the discussion just involves whether a sale is done generously or whether a sale is done sparingly. It has nothing to do with the issue of whether it's considered karka or not in terms of the issue by mikvos. And so the Gemara, trying to find the source for Rabbi Eliezer, is now in the middle of bringing a Mishnah from Meseches Shvius. The Mishnah Meseches Shvius has a machlokus between Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim in terms of a keveres devorim, in terms of a beehive, whether or not that's considered to be like land or whether that's considered to be like metaltalin. And the Mishnah continues, Ve'ena mekabeles tumah b'mekoma. This is the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. It's not mekabel tumah, because Rabbi Eliezer holds that the beehive is considered to be like land. V'harodim imena b'Shabbos, and if somebody takes from that beehive on Shabbos, chayav chatos, it's like you're taking from the land, so you're doing a malacha on Shabbos and you're going to be chayav echatos. V'chachamim omrim, and the Chachamim say eino kakarka, that the beehive is not considered to be like land. Ve'ein kos v'noleh pruzbul, you don't write a pruzbul on a beehive. Again, the halach is the borrower has to have land to write a pruzbul. We'll see the Rashbam in a moment. Umekabeles tumah b'mekom, and it is mekabel tumah because it's not like land. It's mekabel tumah, it receives tumah in its place. V'harodim imena b'Shabbos, and if someone takes from it on Shabbos, potter is going to be potter, because again, it's not considered to be like land, so it's not considered to be a malacha on Shabbos. And so we'll say maybe it's this Rabbi Eliezer over here. Rabbi Eliezer over here is saying that the beehive is considered to be like land. He's not making any distinctions between when it was attached to the ground, at what point in time it was attached to the ground. Maybe that's the Rabbi Eliezer that we are talking about over here. And the Rashbam explains, and this is a continuation of the Rashbam on the previous Amud discussing the concept of pruzbul. The concept of pruzbul again is that the person says, I'm giving over my debts to the judges so that I can collect, and that Shvius, the Shemitah year, will not cancel the loan. Uploni hadayon, I'm giving it over to so-and-so, the judges, Shevimakam ploni, in this place. Shekol chov sheyeshli eitzel ploni shagvenu kol zman she'ertza, any debt that I have by so-and-so, I'll collect it anytime I want. V'hadayonin chosman olav milmata, and then the judges sign below, o ha'edim, or the witnesses sign. V'hilkach, and therefore, mishem mosar shtaros of lebezin legvosim, when a person gives his documents over to the court in order to collect, that they're going to do the collection, so to speak. V'iyu lo kagavi, he's not the one collecting. Lo karina be lo yigos, that's not called lo yigos. It's not a problem of what the pasuk says of collecting after the Shemitah year. The dayanin kamag vule, because it's the judges who collect. V'hefker bezin hefker, and the bezin has that ability because they can make things ownerless. V'hani mili kishayesh lo karka lelov, and the point over here is this entire concept of pruzbul only exists when the borrower has land. That's why it's a question whether the beehive is considered like land or not. Now, why is it that the borrower has to have land? The dami ki'ilu yesh lamalva mashkon, because then it's already similar to the malva having a mashkon, having collateral. Land is something you can always collect from. That would be considered like a mashkon. To be mashkon lo shayach lo yigos, by mashkon you don't have lo yigos. Shekol masha yuchlu chacham l'sakin kedei shelo yehu nirin okrin davar min Torah, as much as the Chachamim could do so that it doesn't look like they're uprooting this Torah concept of the cancellation of debts by Shemitah. Hiskino, they do it that way, so if you have land, it looks better, so to speak. It doesn't look like you're uprooting something from the Torah. Kein nira hatam be'enai, says the Rashbam. This seems to be the reasoning in my eyes. And the Rashbam continues, my Rabbi Zakeni Zatzal, from my Rebbe Shamati, I heard the Masoret Hashas identifies this as Rashi. The Hainu time, that this is the reason. The stam lo ve'ein regilan lahalvoso elim ken yesh lo karka. In general, you usually don't have loans unless there's land to back up the loan. The borrower is supposed to have land, that there's a lien now to the lender. And therefore, a common loan, it was more common to have loans with land, and they're only going to make the takana in a common type of situation. That's where the rabbanan make takanas. But when he doesn't have land, the milsa de lo shlichi, it's something that's uncommon. V'lo takinu rabbanan pruzbul, and therefore the rabbanan do not institute the concept of pruzbul. Also Rabbi Eliezer l'meimen. Rabbi Eliezer over here in this Mishnah is saying, the im yesh lalova keveres devorim. If the borrower has a beehive, kosten pruzbul, you can still write a pruzbul. The sal gadai dechamin afagav deharei kekarka l'shar devarim. So one might have thought, even though the beehive is like land for other matters, legabe hach takana lo chashiva karka. Maybe for this particular takana, it's not considered to be having land. The lo sam chadai de malvi love. The lender's not thinking that he'll be able to now collect from the beehive. Hoel v'yachol nataltala, because that's something that can be moved. He might not be able to get to it. So kamash malon, that's what Rabbi Eliezer is saying. It is considered like land for this purpose. Ve'ina mekabelas tuma, it's not mekabel tuma. Again, we say the beehive is like land, so it's not mekabel tuma. Zuha kveres b'mekoma, meaning when the beehive is in its place. The kaven de mechuberasi lakarka, since it's attached to the ground. Yotza mitoras kli, it's not considered a vessel. V'gam hadvash shebesocha eino mekabel tuma, and also the honey inside it is not mekabel tuma. The batel lagabe kaveres, because it's considered nothing when it's in regards to the kaveres. It's nullified in regards to the beehive itself. And the Rashbam continues, v'dafka b'mekoma. Now this is only true if the beehive is in its place. Avalim notla misham, but let's say you took it from there, from its place. As mekabel hadvash tuma, then the honey would be mekabel tuma. Kiman damar perak hamocher sasfina de loboy machshava de ikaman de matzrach machshava. That would follow the one who says you don't need intention. There is one that says you do need intention. V'hilkach itzrich hacha gabe tuma lemisni b'mekoma. That's why it says over here in its place, because it's specifically in its place that it's not mekabel tuma. V'huadin l'chol hanachmili. That's true of all these things. Has to be in its place. V'haroda mimena kashi b'mekoma. And also you take from the beehive when it's in its place. Makam gidulo, that's the place where it grows, so to speak. Makam gidulo shel devash, that's where the honey is developed. Chayev chatas ketolish men akarka. Then in your chayev chatas, like somebody who uproots something from the ground. There's only a malach on Shabbos if you're uprooting from the ground. This is considered to be ground, and the whole point over here is Alma. We see Rabbi Eliezer chakakol of sov kavo kekarka mashvile. According to Rabbi Eliezer, even if you carved it out first and then attach it to the ground, it's considered to be like land. Ubraisa deleil de lo Rabbi Eliezer, and that's the point, that the brisa before is not going to be like Rabbi Eliezer. Umiyu, and nevertheless, the Rashbam notes, Hanach Rabbanan, the Rabbanan over here in this Mishnah would be consistent with this brisa by mikvos, because the Rabbanan are considering it to be not like karka, and that's what the brisa by mikvah said as well, that if it was chakakol of sof kavo, it's not considered to be like karka. But the Gemara continues, it's not necessarily true. It could be the brisa by mikvos is in fact consistent with Rabbi Eliezer, and the only reason why Rabbi Eliezer says over here the beehive is considered to be like land, hasam over there, meaning again by the beehive, kido amar Rabbi Elazar time, it's like Rabbi Elazar explains the reason. The amar Rabbi Elazar, because Rabbi Elazar says, my time at Rabbi Eliezer, what's the reason of Rabbi Eliezer? Why does he consider the beehive to be like land, even though it's really the equivalent of chakakol of a sof kavo? Dechsib, because it's written in the pasuk, there's a pasuk in Sefer Shmuel, it says vayitbo lo son, he dipped it beyaras hadavash, in the honeycomb, and we understand from this pasuk that we're comparing the davash to a yar, to a forest. My yar hatolish mimenu b'Shabbos chayiv chatas, just like by a forest, if somebody uproots something from there on Shabbos, he's chayiv chatas. Af davash harod mimenu b'Shabbos chayiv chatas. So too when it comes to honey, if somebody takes from it on Shabbos, he's going to be chayiv chatas, and so therefore this would not be a good example of saying that this Rabbi Eliezer over here in the Mishnah of Shvius is not, in the Mishnah in Shvius, is not consistent with the brisa that discussed mikvos. It could be consistent. It could be that when it comes to the beehive, that's different. The beehive is considered to be like land nevertheless because of this pasuk in Sefer Shmuel, but maybe Rabbi Eliezer would make a distinction between chakul of sof kavo and kavul of sof chakaku. And so the Gemara continues, El Rabbi Eliezer de daf, rather the Rabbi Eliezer that we're discussing, that we're saying it's not consistent with this brisa and mikvos, is the Rabbi Eliezer by daf. And this is from a Mishnah Meseches Kalim Detnan, as we learned in the Mishnah, daf shel nachtom, and if you have a baker's board, shekavu bekosel, and you fix it to the wall, Rabbi Eliezer mitar v'chachamim mitar. And Rabbi Eliezer says that it's considered to be tar, it's considered to be pure because it's considered to be like land, it's attached to the wall, and the chachamim say it's mekabel tum, it's considered to be like a vessel. And so now the Gemara explains money, so who is the author, meaning to say, who is the author of the brisa by mikvos? Rabbi Eliezer, if you're going to say it's Rabbi Eliezer, afilu chakakol of a sof kavu, even if it was carved out first and then attached to the ground, it should still be considered to be like land. Just like the Daf Shel Nachtomin is considered to be like a part of the house, it's considered to be like land, so too by the duct, by the mikvah, it should always, no matter how it's made, it should be considered to be like land because it's attached to the ground. And the Gemara continues, Rabbanan, if you're going to say the Brisa by mikvos is the Rabbanan, so the Rabbanan here by the Daf Shel Nachtomin, they consider it always to be a vessel, so the same should be true over there. Afilu kavul avasov chakako, even if it was first in the ground and then you carved it out. Nami, also over there, it should be considered to be a vessel, and so therefore we don't really have a shita over here that makes a distinction between kavul avasov chakako and chagul avasov kavul. And the Gemara answers, Liolam Rabbi Eliezer here. Really, we can say that the Brisa by mikvos is Rabbi Eliezer, Vishani pshute klietz, and it's different by pshute klietz, the tuma derabanan, because that's considered tuma only on a derabanan level, meaning to say, the Gemara is suggesting that by the Daf Shel Nachtomin, the reason why Rabbi Eliezer says tahar, in all situations, even in a situation of chakako or levasov kavo, he still says it's considered to be tahar, it's considered to be like land. That's because we're talking about pshute klietz, we're talking about a wooden vessel that does not have an area to be a receptacle, it can't hold anything, and there the tum is only midrabanan. That's why Rabbi Eliezer is so lenient to say tar and say it's considered to be like karka. But when it comes to the case in mikvos, over there by mikvos, he actually would make a distinction between chakako of sof kavo and kavo of asof chakako, and Rabbi Eliezer would say that by chakako of asof kavo, in that situation he would be machmir and say it's considered to be like drawn water. But the Gemara continues, mechlal the shiva doraisa. Well, that would imply that the drawn water is a disqualification of the mikvah on a doraisa level, because you're trying to say that Rabbi Eliezer in this case over here by the Mishnah in Kalim, by the Daf Shel Nachtomin, so there he always says tar because we're talking about a durabon and he's lenient. But over there by mikvah he's not always lenient because the disqualification of mayim she'uvin is a disqualification on a doraisa level. And the Rashbam explains Daf Shel Nachtomin, the board of a baker, neser rochav laroch olav velolosh asapas. The first explanation the Rashbam gives is it's a board of wood that you're using to knead the dough. Velinir, but to me it appears, says the Rashbam, hu daf shekavua bekosel litin olav asapas limchor. It was a board that was placed against the wall. You put the bread on there in order to sell it. It was a way of displaying the bread. And the Gemara goes on to say, the Rashbam explains, Liolam Rabbi Eliezer, really, we're going to say that the Brisa by mikvos is Rabbi Eliezer. Svir leke Brisa de tziner shechakakul of asof kavu. If you have a tziner, you have a duct that first you carved it out and then you attach it to the ground, he'd be machmir akati klihu. You'd say it's still considered to be a vessel. Velo batal agave karka, it's not nullified to the ground. Upasal es mikvah, and it would disqualify the mikvah. And so then the question is, why by this baker's board is he always lenient? And here, when it comes to the board, the reason why Rabbi Eliezer says it's pure, afilu b'tiknul of a sof kavu, even in a case where you first made it and then attached it to shani pshute klietz, because it's different by pshute klietz, by wooden vessels that are not receptacles, can go in haydaf like this board of wood. Afilu kodem shekavu ein lo tuma elamid rabban, and there even before you affixed it, it doesn't have tuma. The only tuma it has is on a rabbanan level. V'hilkach bekavu mekel Rabbi Eliezer. That's why in this case Rabbi Eliezer would be lenient in a situation of kavu, in a situation where you attached it to the house. That's enough of a reason to be lenient. But when it comes to the duct, where we say that drawn water disqualifies a mikvah on a doraisa level, so there Rabbi Eliezer is going to be more machmir. And then the Gemara said, the Gemara then asks, that sounds like mayim shuvin is doraisa. Because from the answer you're giving, it sounds like the disqualification of mayim shuvin is doraisa mayri. That's what we're talking about. And so the Gemara is going to go on to ask, it's not true. It's really a psul only midrabanan. Meseches Yevamis, like we say in Meseches Yevamis, Shimhaya mikvah mem sa v'nasan sa shuv. And let's say you have a mikvah of 40 sa of rainwater, and then you put 1 sa of drawn water, v'natal sa, and then you take out a sa. Kosher, it's kosher. Ad kama, for how much can you do that? Rabbi Yochanan Amar ad ruba, you can do that all the way till the majority. V'hainu taima d'midoraisu d'ba'inan mikvah mimayim mechunasan lechatchila below sheiva. And the reason is because on a doraisa level you need to have not drawn water in the mikvah. The iskish lamayin, it's compared to a mayon, it's compared to a spring, kidefarishis la'el, like I explained earlier. Ve'afilu naflu basar achi she'uvin batlu beruba. Then afterwards, if drawn water falls in, it becomes nullified in the majority. Inami kama kama batal, or as it's falling in, each drop becomes nullified. Ule'el nami gabetzino hamikvah. And so earlier also, by the case of the duct by the mikvah, haya asui kvarka hogan, the mikvah was already had rainwater, was already a kosher mikvah. V'achakach kavu shamtzino, and then you put the duct over there. Kenektani posel es hamikvah. It says that it's disqualifying the mikvah. Mechlal dehaya sham mikvah mikveh meikara. That sounds like there was a kosher mikveh in the first place. Hilkach psula midrabanu. Therefore, this disqualification should not be a doraisa. It should only be a disqualification on a derabanan level. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Samech Vav Amid Beis.